Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Brightside studio. I am here today with Dr. John and Jerry Baker, and we are here to talk to you about our upcoming Veterans Day special event that will be on November the 11th, and we have a giveaway for everyone who will attend. And this is a special event for veterans who are suffering from weight loss, from weight obesity and diabetes. So Dr. John, I'd like you to introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about you and your books, and then we'll introduce Jerry.
Ms. Elizabeth, thank you for having me, and I thank the club for listening to me. I'm originally from Kerala, India. I had my medical degree from the University of Kerala. I went to Scotland to do internship. I did 2 years of residency, one in Washington, D.C., one in Phoenix, Arizona. I did 2 years of fellowship, one in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and one in Ontario, Canada, McMaster University. Now, then I came back to the United States from 1972, 73, I have been practicing. I practiced in Texas for the last 30 years, but 10 years ago, I retired so I can start concentrating on my books. I have written 4 books. The first one is Eat, Chew, Live. That is the basic mechanism of hunger and satiation. For example, you don't know when you are going to be hungry next time. And you don't know how much food will it take to satisfy yourself. So how can you have a diet program without knowing what your body is looking for and how to moderate your intake? The second one is about diabetes. The first one will show you how to prevent weight gain, how to prevent diabetes. The second one is, if you already have it, how can you reverse it without medications, with just dietary manipulation or changes? 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. So I started looking into that. And 3 years ago, I wrote the third book, Surviving Cancer. Then when I was giving a talk, I was asked by a cancer specialist, the average age of an adult with cancer is 60 plus because it takes 6 decades of mutation, accumulated mutation, before a cancer cell is formed in an adult body. However, the average age of a child with cancer is 6. The child has not lived long enough to accumulate mutations. How can a child have cancer? So the result of that is my 4th book, When Your Child Has Cancer. So this is where I am, and I thank you for having me and listening to me.
Wonderful. 4 books. That's outstanding.
So I can't help but wonder.
I know.
I can't help but wonder. Eat, Chew, Live. Was that related to Eat, Pray, Love?
Well,
Eat, Pray,
in a
Love.
way, but the thing is, if you want to know, can you think of any food in nature that we can get nutrients from without chewing?
Right.
Wow, that's amazing.
Why did nature put it that way? There is a reason.
Sure.
If you read that book,
Yes.
you will know exactly why. You have to chew your food. Just to give you an example, can I continue?
Sure,
Yes,
please.
go ahead.
When you get thirsty, can you predetermine the amount of water that will take to quench your thirst?
No, I don't think so.
Now, how long will it take? If I give you water right now, how long will it take to quench your thirst? A minute?
I have an average answer to that. I have an average answer.
No, right now.
About
right
12
now.
ounces of fluid.
Right now.
Okay. I can't answer that.
How many sips will it take?
12 ounces? Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know.
By the
Yeah.
time you finish drinking,
Jerry, do you know?
I don't know.
by the time you finish drinking, your thirst is quenched. But the water you drank is still in your stomach. It has not been absorbed yet. How did the brain know you had enough?
Sure, sure.
Right. Yep.
Is that
Right? So
We're
there is
listening.
well, here's a question. Are you suggesting as a behavioral or a automatic response your system identifies?
well, what I'm trying to say is as you are drinking, receptors in the mouth not only knows what you are drinking, whether you are drinking water or beer or wine or coffee, but it is also metering how much is going down. And your brain knows what is the deficit. When the intake matches the deficit, your thirst is quenched. Similarly, there is a mechanism for each and every nutrient. When you chew, the nutrients are released onto the tongue surface. The taste buds and the smell receptors pick them up, report to the brain how much is going down. That is the mechanism. It's the same mechanism in evolution. The drinking and tasting control were food intake control was same. Then it separated into two. But the basic physiological mechanism is still the same.
Wow. That is fascinating. I mean, it's what you tell your, I know I eat too fast and he eats too slow. And so, so I'm always thinking, I don't even remember what I ate. So, you got to tell your brain that. So that's good. Now hold that thought. We're going to come back because I think that's the book we're giving away. Can you, to
Correct.
everyone who attends.
Okay.
So that is great.
Well-
Now let me just go to Jerry. Jerry Baker, thank you for your service. And he has been with the U.S. Navy. So Jerry, please introduce yourself and then we'll get back to the interview.
Sure. Well, thank you. Yeah, as Claire said, my name is Jerry Baker. I actually joined the United States Navy in 1971. I was brought on primarily to manage blood banks and clinical laboratories. And while I was in the service, the Navy was kind enough to send me to graduate school for our master's in clinical pathology. I say they were kind enough to do that, but I had to stay 3 additional years to pay back. So I guess I did pay for it. During the time in the Navy also, I was so primarily functioned as a clinical scientist, then was certified as a fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executives and did more in the way of healthcare administration and so on. So I retired from the Navy, then spent another 15 years or so in the Defense Health Agency. So it's all work in the area of healthcare. But then after I retired from that, I realized, or I began a health and wellness business, and just recognizing the fact that clinical medicine does a great job at diagnosing and treating either symptoms and or diseases, but not a real good job at preventing it. Like you talked about, Dr. John, how do you prevent diabetes? So that's been our focus, is on how to prevent diseases, just recognizing that most diseases in this country, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and that sort of thing, can be prevented by good nutrition, because we just don't get the nutrition from our foods that we used to get. So that's been our focus. We work with Shackley Corporation. Dr. Shackley actually was a founder of the wellness movement, creating the first multivitamin in 1915, and then establishing a Shackley Corporation in 1956, where we've now transitioned from one multivitamin for everybody to a most recent innovation, which is called Meology. Basically, it is nutrition that's designed specifically for you and for your body, whatever your health needs are, your health concerns, and so on. So that's been a groundbreaking innovation in nutrition by Shackley. So that's where we're focused. But again, more like you're talking about, Dr. John, focusing on preventing diseases. If you have diseases, basically, you know, if you give your body what it needs, your body will heal itself. So we don't heal anything, but we provide the nutrition that your body needs to do what it does best, which is to, at the cellular level, to be able to heal itself.
And so we're so excited to have Jerry. Jerry's been our sponsor and just a wonderful person to work with. So thank you, Jerry, for your service, and thank you for continuing to help business owners and empower them. And let's go back to Dr. John.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. John, I think what we'll do, since you've done 4 books and 4 exciting books, I think we'll talk about each book. And then maybe if there's questions at the end, Elton has, he's got tons of questions.
But
okay.
First, and we'll start with the first book, but I wanted to touch the issue that you've described, Dr. John, about diabetes being a gateway disease and how it opens the door to many other illnesses and chronic ailments that we deal with. And I guess as a premise, you talk about the eat, chew, and live, and that, I guess, steps into that, if I understand you correctly. And so one more thing, I want to understand the aspects of this as it relates to enzymes, if you can, and how our body breaks food down, because that's where improper or issues come up that way, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm.
Are you asking me? Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes.
So if I understand you correctly, what you want to know is what's the connection between eating, weight gain, diabetes, and rest of the diseases that opens up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's correct.
So if you look at the evolution of food consumption, let me take the Native Americans, for example. They moved from one food source to another. They had to move to get food. Why? Because they did not stay in one place to cultivate food. They moved. Right now, just to give you an example, if you take the Pima Indians, 50% of adults over age 35 are diabetic. Now, compare them with the in 1900. In the year 1900, when they were brought to the reservations, they practically had no type 2 diabetes, none to speak of.
Okay.
And they also did not have much cancer. In fact, the Royal College of Physicians in London sent a team through Columbia University to study the Indians, the Native Americans, to see whether they are immune to cancer. Why are they not having diabetes? That was done later, another study. In 1984, a doctor in South Africa took 10 native Australians, Aborigines, with type 2 diabetes on medication and asked them to go back to the bush and live like their ancestors. In 8 weeks, they were able to stop their diabetic medications, they lost their weight, and their blood sugar came back to normal. Now, a third example is people who have HIV infection. When they are treated with antiretroviral treatment, they have a higher percentage of people getting type 2 diabetes, even younger people. Why? The antiretroviral agents inhibit the formation or maturation of fat cells. So they have what is called dystrophy. Like, fat cells are not formed. So what has that got to do with diabetes? Now I'm going to back up a little bit. Diabetes means elevation of blood sugar. Now, ordinarily in the body, who uses the maximum sugar? What organ? Our muscles. Muscles are responsible for using 80% of the glucose absorbed after a meal. But if muscles are not using it, that glucose is converted by the liver into fatty acid to be stored in our fat cells as fat. Imagine, if you will, your fat cells are full. The fatty acids will stay in the blood. Now, think about this. All day long, you have not eaten anything, but you can still work out. You can still do your job. Your muscles still work, and your athletes still can run. Where does the muscle get the energy from? The muscle is like a hybrid engine. It can use either glucose or fatty acid to produce energy. So if the muscle is running on fatty acid, it does not need glucose. The glucose stays in the blood. So now, to summarize all that, if your fat stores are already full, glucose coming from the food will stay in the blood as glucose, and the blood sugar is elevated. And next thing you know, you are diagnosed as type 2 diabetes. So, two things. One, what is your storage capacity? In India, 60% of the people diagnosed with type 2 diabetes are not obese. They are either normal weight or underweight. They are not obese. Here,
Right.
85%
I never
of the
thought
people,
about it. Yeah.
here 85% of the people are obese. 70% of veterans are obese. They have 25% incidence of diabetes compared to 20% for the general population. So if you fill up your fat storage capacity, it doesn't matter whether you are diagnosed as obese or overweight. No, even a lean person, if you have inherited only 10 pounds of fat storage capacity, if you fill it up, the glucose will stay in the blood. If you are a pregnant woman with no family history of diabetes, you are eating for 2 people, you are encouraged to eat, you fill up your fat storage capacity, fatty acids stay in the blood, muscles use the fatty acid, the glucose level goes up, you have a gestational diabetes. After you have the baby, you lose weight, the fatty acid can be stored in the fat cell, and your diabetes disappears. So the same theory, hypothesis can be applied whether you are obese, lean, or pregnant. You don't need 3 different hypotheses. Now, there are some obese people with normal blood sugar. Why? Because they inherited a large fat storage capacity. So even if they gain 50 pounds, they still have extra capacity. Their blood sugar will be normal. Is that clear?
Yeah, it is.
Wow, that
Well,
sounds so amazing.
So, I mean, of
Yeah.
course, the obvious question is, one, how do you know that your storage capacity is, to its maximum? And then, of course, how do you reduce your storage capacity?
That comes from his book.
Excellent question.
Listen.
Excellent question. If you are having an annual blood test, look at what is called triglyceride. Most doctors don't talk about it.
Triglycerides.
Right. That is the name of fat that you are storing in the body. The triglyceride means...
Okay, triglycerides.
Correct. Triglyceride means 3 molecules of fatty acid with 1 molecule of glycerol. Okay? So, before you become a diabetic, before your blood sugar start going up, the triglyceride level will start going up year after year. So that is your signal that your fat stores are getting filled up. Unfortunately, we do not have a test to measure fatty acid level. Otherwise, you will see that. That is before your blood sugar start going up. Then what you have to look at is the fasting blood sugar. If that is keep creeping up, then you know that there is no place for that to be stored.
I see. But you'll get some symptoms like dizziness, or a headache, or I don't know. I mean, I'm saying some kind of physical parameters that tell you, you're reaching your maximum, triglycerol level. You need to tone it down.
No, that's the problem. Just like in the case of high blood pressure, you don't have symptoms as your blood sugar is keep creeping up, as your triglyceride level is creeping up. There are no symptoms.
Okay.
So
really?
only the blood test will tell us. Or if you look at your weight after age 35, you start gaining weight, 1 pound a year, 2 pounds a year, and it keeps adding up. Okay. If you can keep your weight at the same level as that was in your mid-20s, provided, okay, provided the idea is you reach the maximum height and maximum bone density by that time. So that is the key, because if your blood tests were normal, if you are not bulimic or any other, if you are not pregnant, that is if you measure your blood your parameters at that time, if they are normal, that is your ideal weight. Any weight you put on after age 35 is strictly fat. And in fact, you're losing muscle mass every year, at least 0.5 to 1 pound a year, then you'll be losing it. So if you remain the same weight, what is causing that maintenance? It is just fat, not muscle, not organs, not bone. So that is what you have to keep.
That is.
Yeah. So the problem is, of course, I've got a standard weight. I'm trying to maintain the weight, but my appetite is still working, and I still want to eat. So I mean, trying to measure the eating against your physical size and weight, and then measuring that against your appetite. You're hungry. So I mean, these are the problems that American culture faces. I'm hungry. I'm full. Well, I'm not really full, but I have an appetite to eat, and I'm maximizing my weight structure. So trying to find how can I put it, a counterweight, if you will, a counterweight to help me keep those things in check, where I may be hungry, but I don't need to eat. Or I've reached the capacity for my appetite, but I have a taste to eat something. There are a lot of parameters that are out of whack in terms of the American culture and diet and appetite.
Hold that thought. Jerry, do you want to add anything to this interesting conversation before we go into the book? Yeah.
We have a term, it's the Standard American Diet, SAD. SAD.
Yeah, okay.
And that's part of the problem. Eating is not a problem, it's what you eat. And Dr. John, you can correct me, but there are certain foods that you can eat that really don't contain a lot of calories or anything. You could eat celery, and there are other foods like that that are almost unlimited in what you can eat. So if you're hungry, well, the first thing I know when I get hungry, first thing I do is drink some water, because sometimes, as I understand it anyhow, appetite or thirst sometimes disguises itself as desire for food. And you drink the water and you realize, oh, I'm not really that hungry. Or, just being careful what it is that you do eat. There's another, I don't know, I'd be interested in your comments, Dr. John, on low glycemic index. Foods that have a low glycemic index are generally a lot better for people well, people have diabetes, but whether they have diabetes or not, having the right mixture of, I think, carbohydrates and fiber, is that what it is? But keeping that glycemic index low is one thing that helps to prevent diabetes.
Okay.
And our focus is all natural.
Right.
As much as possible, although organic is just a process. Organic foods are raised without pesticides or herbicides, but there's no guarantee there's no pesticides or herbicides in the soil or in the water or in the air. And so, again, that's one thing which actually, when they process organic sources for their nutritional products, they do 350 tests on it, each one, to ensure that there are indeed no pesticides, herbicides, or any other things like arsenic or lead and that sort of thing. So, yeah, so it's, while organic is better, would seem to be better, there's no guarantee that that's free of, of pesticides or herbicides or other kinds of poisons as well.
Okay.
So back to you, Dr. John. And then you can bring us into your book about eating.
The human body needs 100 different nutrients. And each cell group, we have 200 different cell types in the body. For example, red blood cells need iron, bones need calcium, and other, just like that, different cell types, organs need different nutrients. You cannot get all the nutrients from any one food, food group, or one meal. That is why we have hunger, the sensation of hunger. But you cannot predetermine when you are going to feel hungry. So what is the mechanism? The mechanism is there's a brain center that gets reports from various parts of the body. What nutrients are being used up, what is left over, what is needed, because different organs will report back. And when the accumulated deficiency reaches a threshold level, you will get hungry. But you don't know what your body is looking for. When you are hungry, when you sit down to eat, you still don't know what your body is looking for. Well, so the question is, do we have a mechanism to get what we need? The very fact that humans have been surviving for 50,000 years means you have to have a mechanism, otherwise we wouldn't be here. Can that still be applied? All you have to do is look at toddlers. If you observe toddlers, you will observe three things. One, they eat only when they are hungry. Second, they pick and choose what they want at that time. Third, when they are done, they could care less how much is left on the plate. They will go out and play. You cannot make them open their mouth once they are done. Now, they don't eat the same volume each time. Grandmothers will make their favorite food one day and they won't even look at it. They don't want it. Next day, they will eat all of it and ask for more. Their appetite changes. The quantity is different. What they want, what they choose, you cannot predict. Why? Because only their brain knows what nutrients are needed each time they eat. And they chew, they eat when they are satisfied. They don't eat until their stomach is full. So the two things in the present day American diet or all over the world is, one, we eat too fast. We are not enjoying. That's the number one problem. That especially people who are in the Army or Navy, they have to eat when they are told to eat. They cannot wait for when they are hungry. The same with the working.
Time. It's shot time.
Yeah. So you have to eat. Then what happens is you disconnect the natural control mechanisms. When you disconnect the natural control mechanisms, you don't know when you are satisfied, when you had enough. So your backup is fullness of the stomach. When you drink water, you don't drink until your stomach is full. If you do that, you'll be in trouble. I don't know whether you heard about the California flight attendant who had to do a drug test. So she was asked to produce a sample of urine. So she could not. She started drinking water. She drank 1 liter, could not produce urine. 2 liters, could not produce urine. She drank 3 liters of water before she could produce a sample. 8 hours later, 8 to 10 hours later, she was in the emergency room. When that all water was absorbed, it was too much dilution of her electrolytes in the body, her heart rate, her brain function. She was confused. So that is what nature has made us do to prevent overeating. You listen to the taste and smell, the sensations, not the fullness, the satisfaction, not the fullness. If you do that, in order to do that though, you need to chew, you need to slow down. You cannot be, you have to concentrate on the enjoyment of food. If you're hungry, that first bite tastes so good. After 5 minutes, it doesn't taste as good. After 10 minutes, you eat only because you don't want to waste food.
That's right.
Okay, you just opened up a whole cadre. No, because I'm looking at the 100 different nutrients your body needs.
And I see Jerry smiling because he's selling those vitamins with the nutrients.
Okay, now let me cut to the chase. And in your book, do you define the 100 different nutrients? And I'd like to know, and this is one thing that I've really had a is a question I'm in a quandary about, is iodine. Now the body needs iodine, but of course the only source that I can identify is iodine salt, which has a dubious nature and condition to it. And if you have any interest or value, that's what I'm understanding. And and whether or not iodine or the lack of iodine has an impact on diabetes.
Well, I have not studied that particular nutrient in terms of diabetes, so I cannot answer that directly. But as I said about the Native Americans, they practically had no type 2 diabetes. So they did not concentrate on iodine or what they did was they ate fresh food, vegetables primarily, they ate everything.
Okay.
Well, vegetables, fruits, nuts, eggs, animal products. What they did
not eat. A lot of.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. The American Indian used a lot of corn or maize. Corn was an important aspect of the diet.
Corn on the wild corn, not corn flour, but very little.
Not yellow corn. Okay.
What has happened is, in the modern day diet, when is the last time you had a snack or a meal without a grain flour product?
A snack or meal without no, I think
all of them have a grain.
All of them have a grain.
100 years ago, only 35% of our energy came from grains or carbohydrate. 35. Now, in the American diet, it is 50% to 70%. The poorer you are, the higher your percentage of energy coming from carbohydrate, like bread, like pasta, like noodles, like rice, because they are the cheapest. Because our federal government is subsidizing grain farming to the tune of $25 billion a year. So the cheapest food available, the most packaged foods available are all grain-based. That is why the lower strata of the society in economic terms have the higher incidence of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cancer, because they are loading up their body with grain flour products. Now, let me ask you this question.
Uh,
Miss Elizabeth, if you boil rice, can you eat it by itself?
Yeah, I can. But that's
Without
me.
anything.
He has to put butter on it and all sorts of things.
Right.
But I mean, I'm okay with it.
She's
Yeah,
she can eat.
I can eat rice day and night, but I have to slow down on rice. Yeah.
Can you enjoy rice just by rice itself?
Yes, because we don't eat salt, so yeah, I can.
Okay.
But he has butter and soya sauce and 20 things to it. Yeah.
The vast majority of people won't be able to enjoy rice by itself unless you add something. So the enjoyment comes from not from the rice, but from what you are adding onto it. So in other words, if you look at the other way, you are diluting the enjoyment of the other food by adding rice to it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh. That's funny. So you're saying
the same with pasta.
Yes.
You are diluting the enjoyment of the pasta sauce by adding pasta to it. The problem is the pasta, not the sauce.
Right.
So if we can cut down the amount of the grain flour products, that's all I'm asking. Cut down the intake of grain-based foods to 50%, half of what you are doing right now. We can reverse type 2 diabetes, we can avoid obesity, and even slow down cancer growth.
We didn't know that. So
That's
that
very
was good.
interesting. That's
Yeah,
very
so there
interesting.
you have it. So let me wrap up the interview and then I'll stop recording and then we can talk some more. But let's get into the books. So I'd like to, do you have a copy of the Eat, Chew book that you can show us?
Eat, Chew, Live.
Yes, and tell us about it. What motivated you to write the book? Yes, this is the one I think we're giving away, and I'll confirm that. But I'm excited about this whole event, and you, Dr. John, you're so charismatic. So yes, go ahead. Tell us about the book. Yeah.
Well, when I was in the mid-40s, I started noticing gaining weight, 1 or 2 pounds a year, but I gained it during the winter time and lost it in spring. But after age 50, I saw that my weight gain is not going away, even in spring and summer. So I asked myself why. I thought I was eating the same amount, I was exercising the same amount. Then I started looking into it. No, if I don't eat, I cannot gain weight, that's for sure. So there's something here that's not balancing. And what I found was I'm eating the same amount because I have become conditioned to putting a certain volume. Now, let me give you a side story here. I was counseling 10 overweight American adults about weight loss or maintaining. So I asked them, write down the time you felt hungry and the time you ate for 3 days over the weekend. 4 out of 10 never felt hungry for 3 days. However, that didn't stop them from eating. So I asked them why.
No.
Because they said it was time to eat. So we have become conditioned. We have become conditioned to eat, whether we are hungry or not. So that is when I started researching into what is the physiology of hunger. What makes you feel hungry? We cannot predetermine. We cannot predict when you are going to be hungry. If that is the case, how can you give a diet to anybody? Because you don't know what that person is looking for when they sit down to eat. How can you say you should eat so many servings of carbohydrates, so many servings of protein, so many servings of whatever? How do you know? The toddler doesn't know, but he can eat or she can eat and grow, essentially control the food intake on their own and grow up normally. If they can do that, why can't we? Do you know when we lose that capacity? At age 6. You know why? You start listening to your parents.
Yeah.
They tell you, you don't have time to stop by, eat. If you eat this, I'll give you a reward. Or you cannot waste food.
Right.
There are people starving in India, in China. You better finish what is on your plate. So I told my group, I told my group, I grew up in India. Certain days I didn't eat, but I didn't feel hungry. Why? Because you were eating for me.
Right. That's interesting. Now, you know, in India and even in America, food and eating has a ceremony to it, has a habitual and cultural ceremony. And in India, it is too, because I mean, in the Dabawala, they would deliver your tins, and you know, there's a ceremony around food. And culturally, how can you resist the ceremony of eating? You know.
Well, we noticed in India was during lunchtime. Yeah.
All I'm saying is that is all. We can continue all that, but cut down the amount of grain-based foods. Second, concentrate on food that he can chew. If he cannot chew, you know, just if you drink water, if you pour it straight down the throat, will you take more or less?
More.
Probably more. Yeah, I agree with Jerry, more.
That is exactly what you're doing when you're not chewing. You're vacuuming it up.
Okay. Yeah. Now, keep in mind, now this is great information. I'm truly being inspired by your evaluations and your analysis. And, you know, and I know, I mean, I'm a big student about food and the consumption, because they say 70% of your body's complete immune system is in your belly, is in your gut, is in your colon and intestines. So, and if you have to consistently inspire and keep your system free and clear of any kind of inhibitions to keep your body clear, you know, like that. So, and then the 100 nutrients you talk about, my goodness, I wish there was some kind of device that you could either take, or, you know, that could tell you what your body's short of in nutrients. I mean, swallow something, or take a blood test or something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There's a problem with that. What is, it will tell you how much is floating in the blood, but you don't know what is in storage.
Okay.
But even more importantly, when you're hungry, what you're missing. Equally important, you don't know what is the content of that nutrient in the food you're going to be eating. So how can you have all this information for each meal? But you don't need it.
That's true.
Look at the toddlers. They don't have this information. So if they can do it,
that's right.
Wow.
That's right. Absolutely. For toddler can do it. Jerry, you wanted to say something? I know Jerry's excited because he sells nutrients. Go ahead.
Elton, a good place to start is do the meology assessment like Claire did.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to this week. That was on my list of things to do.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm evaluating that accordingly. Yeah, I will.
I can see Jerry's so excited because he's been telling us about this for what, 3-4 months now. Right. So this is perfect. So let's go to the second book. Jerry, do you have a comment before we go to the second book?
The only other comment I had, one other thing I think I had presented before was on what we call our healthy cleanse, 7 days healthy cleanse, and it's all fruits and vegetables, all things you can chew, no grains, just fruits and vegetables. Had to come up with some creative recipes so I would eat the vegetables, but I even came up with, well, we have a non-dairy cream of cauliflower soup, which I actually liked, which if you had told me that a couple of years ago, I was just no way I would drink cauliflower soup or eat cauliflower soup. Only problem with that is you don't have to chew. So but there are plenty of other things, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
vegetables and, and lettuce and mushrooms and other things. And people have had just dramatic results with that. I mean, there's weight loss, which is good, but they feel so much better because they're not eating any grains and they're just eating fruits, vegetables, no meat protein or anything like that. And then some supplements to help to cleanse the liver and so on. So yeah, it is so important. And the other thing about that is when you are finished, your appetite for some of those things that like sweets and ice cream and things like that, your appetite for those things dramatically decreases. So yeah, there are certainly things you can do to be more healthy in terms of what you eat. So yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So we're all in agreement. So let's quickly, because I have to wrap up for time, show us the 3 other books that you have, Dr. John, and then I can't wait for you to come and speak to the club, because you're going to love everyone in the club and they're going to love your books. So tell us quickly about the last 3 books, and then I'll leave questions and then we'll close.
When I was presenting Eat to Live, I had people coming to me and saying, I already have type 2 diabetes, so I cannot avoid it. What do I do? So that is when I researched more, and that is when I found out about the Native Americans and this research in Australia and what happens with the people with HIV. And so I wrote Diabetes. The one thing is, right now, if you ask about diabetes, if you look at the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Disease website, the definition is you develop type 2 diabetes because your liver, fat, and muscle cells are not responding to insulin. And you may have heard of what is called the insulin resistance theory. Now, for any science hypothesis, any hypothesis in any scientific field, Dr. Jerry can tell you more about this, it has to be validated before it is accepted as fact. And that validation has 3 criteria: logic, mechanism, and measurement. Now, let's take one by one. How logical it is, only 3 cell types become resistant out of 200. Why? What is the reason? And why are they resisting only insulin, not any other hormone in the body? There's no reason, there's no explanation. Now, what is the mechanism? In type 1 diabetes, they don't produce insulin. It happens in childhood. In type 2, insulin is there. Insulin is sending a message. By the way, insulin does not get into a cell. All insulin does is to announce the presence of glucose outside the cell, because the cell has no receptor to know glucose is outside. When somebody comes to your home, they ring the doorbell to let you know they are outside. But glucose cannot do that. It is insulin who does that. Even then, that does not mean automatic admission into the cell. The cell has to send in a transporter, a wagon, load up glucose and bring it in. So the mechanism, is it because a defective signal? Is it a defective gene? Is it a defective execution? Is it the same in all the 3 cells? We don't know. Nobody has defined the mechanism of insulin resistance. Third, we cannot measure the degree of insulin resistance in any one of these 3 sites. You give somebody an insulin injection, the blood sugar goes down. Where does it go? Does it go into the cell that was supposedly resistant? We don't know without a test. So this is what I'm clarifying. So type 2 diabetes, not as a hormonal disease, but as a lifestyle condition, because we are overloading our system with grain-based foods, which produce a lot of glucose.
Interesting. I can't wait to read the book. All right. And the next book you said you had 4 books.
As I said, 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. So I asked my oncologist, why? I'm not obese, I'm not overweight, I'm eating the same, exercising. All he said was, check on your Cancer Society website. So I went to American Cancer Society website. And they said improper diet and lack of exercise. I went to India and I asked an oncologist.
That must have been hard for you. Yeah.
I asked an oncologist, this incidence of cancer is increasing in India. Why? And you know what he said? Improper diet and lack of exercise. In China, the same thing. In South America, the same thing. In Africa, the same thing. So how can everybody having improper diet and lack of exercise? It didn't make sense to me. So I researched into that. And what I found is this. Human body, you know, when you have the maximum number of precancerous cells in your body, when you are in the mother's womb, that is when you have the maximum number of precancerous cells. Why? Because the cells are multiplying crazy. We are all the product of one single cell, the zygote. After the sperm fertilizes the egg, one cell has to produce 32 trillion cells to form a human body. Okay? So mistakes happen. A mistake is called a mutation. Mutations happen. A mutated cell can become a precancerous cell, but our immune system can kill it. So if we have the immune system capable of killing cancer cells, why do we have cancer? Because we are feeding the cancer cell. The cancer cells are multiplying faster than the immune system can destroy them. Suppose the immune system can destroy, Jerry can identify this. If we can kill 100 people at a time in an hour, but there are 110 coming in, who wins in the end? The same way, the immune system can kill 100 cancer cells, but the cancer cell production is higher. Why? Because unlike most cells, cancer cells preferentially use glucose, not only to produce energy, but also to create raw materials needed for construction of new cells. Cancer cell, each cancer starts with one stem cell, and that's a mother cell. It keeps producing baby cells with the same capability. So in order to produce the new cells, the mother cell needs energy and materials. And cancer cell gets both of these from glucose. So the more glucose you have, the faster they multiply, overpowering the immune system, and you have cancer. So that is what I have done with my diagnosis, cut down the intake of grains and grain-based food.
That's amazing.
So if I understand you correctly, then the surplus of glucose, because cancer cells will use glucose to grow and prosper, then a surplus is part of the problem. Surplus of course, glucose and fatty cells from your original hypothesis, if that's how if you can reduce those in your system that way.
Right. The fatty said if muscles use fatty acids, then that leaves glucose. But keep in mind, after a meal, within the next 4 hours, your blood sugar level will go up. And the cancer cells can extract that. Jerry mentioned glycemic index. Do you know what that means? That means how fast the blood sugar will go up after a meal. Equally important is the glycemic load. What's the total amount of glucose in that food that you are eating? So you have to balance. If you increase the glucose level immediately after a meal, your cancer cells are very efficient in picking that up. So they will feed themselves, gorge themselves on glucose earlier than your normal cells, because your normal cell is waiting for insulin to tell them. Whereas cancer cells don't need insulin to absorb glucose.
Okay.
Okay, so I have two questions.
Yes.
Being a doctor and writing books, when you were diagnosed with cancer and only to find out it was an eating disorder, that must have been a big surprise for you.
Well, it is not, when you are diagnosed with cancer, the first thing is fear. What is going to happen to you? What's going to happen to your family? The whole life is upset.
Yes.
And most of that fear, what I call, is from anticipatory fear, because you don't know. The more you know, the less you are afraid of that condition. So that was the reason I wanted to know. Otherwise I'm totally dependent on my oncologist. He tells me what to do or what not to do. I wanted to be in charge, at least to know, is there anything I can contribute?
Sure.
Now, that will be a good time for me to say why I wrote the fourth book, which is why when your child has cancer. Can you think of something more tragic than for parents to know your child has cancer? You're totally helpless. You're totally dependent on the oncologist. I want to show the parents that they can do something. For example, right now in the United States, there are 400,000 adults survivors of childhood cancer. Okay, because of treatments, improved treatments, 80 to 90% of them survive. Now, they are not completely out of the woods. They have late symptoms. Why? Primarily due to the dosage and type of treatment like chemotherapy and radiation. And the dose of those treatments is related to the tumor itself or the cancer, how fast it is growing. Suppose we can slow down the rate of growth of leukemia or brain tumor, you need that much less medication, which means when you survive in adult life, you don't have as much late effects. You can cut down. Imagine a young person, survivor of childhood cancer, having a nice job. Suddenly he starts developing memory issues. He cannot remember. How devastating that will be for the family. Suppose a young lady who had cancer cannot conceive because of the cancer treatment. Suppose we can reduce the dosage of these medications. And again, the same theory applies. Don't feed the cancer cell, feed the body with all the nutrients, cut down the grain intake, cut down the glucose. You can slow down cancer growth, use less medication, and have less side effects later on in life.
Wow.
I want to make this simple comment.
I have to close.
Okay. Let me just say this simple thing. Here locally, we have an Air Force base, Seymour Johnson. Now, recently we met the commander for all communications, and she received almost 6,000, messages every day. 6,000. Now, I bring this up because the body is an intense, complicated series of messaging. The whole body gets messages from the kidney gets messages from the brain, who knows how many messages the body sends to itself to tell us what is involved. Now, we get the outside indications of some of the messages, but we never receive the internal memos. We don't know what those memos are. We don't know you don't even know what nutrients and vitamins we need. If there were some kind of reading component that, this is in order, that needs attention, this needs to be checked, that you need to get on. And if we could find the ways and methods to find and read those messages, then it would probably eliminate, like you're saying, insulin. it gives an indication that the glucose is free to check and pass through. I don't know that's going on. The body does, but I mean, the brain maybe. So, I mean, it's a very interesting analysis, and you pose some very, it's really, complex in its interpretation. If you could just respond to that, from your own thinking perspective, and then we'll wrap up and get a close on top of it.
And I will have more at the club, at the actual meeting. So, okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I did not understand what you said.
He was just making a comment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to, because Jerry spoke the least, to say something, and then I'll go back to you, Dr. John. And how do you pronounce your last name? And then I'll come back to me and Elton, and we'll close. Okay, so I'm going to give everyone,
just the way it is written. It is phonetically correct. Poothullil or Poothullil.
Poothullil. Okay.
Yeah.
Poothullil. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's a beautiful name. What does it mean?
It means, Poo in Malayalam means flower. Poothullil means full of flowers.
Whoa, full of knowledge. Okay.
Are you in Kerala now?
No.
I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Oregon.
Okay.
Portland, Oregon. Okay. All right. So Jerry Baker, I'm going to let you close, and then I'll bring Dr. Poothullil back.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Poothullil. Very informative, interesting. I guess the only other comment I would make is there are things that we can do as well with botanicals that increase the efficiency of our immune systems. And so that's very, very critical as well. And I won't go into a sales pitch, but I know there are a number of products that Shaklee has produced that in clinical studies, it increases the number of killer cells by 2 times and the number of the neutrophils by 4 times, which really helps to fight infection and cancers and that sort of thing. So another aspect of the approach, I think, is also to build up the immune system as well as trying to decrease the cancer cells, so the immune system doesn't have to work as hard. So, but I think we're all saying the same thing. It's basically God has given us what we need in nature, and what we need to do is just as we say, we use science to unlock the secrets of nature and then give the body what it needs, and the body will heal itself. So, but very, very informative. Thank you for coming on and sharing today.
Thank you so much. So, Dr. John, would you like to wrap us up, and then I'll bring Elton in? Yeah.
What Jerry said is exactly correct, because we need the immune system to be strong and healthy. And what I'm trying to do is, on the one hand, slow down the evolution of an illness, whether it is type 2 diabetes or cancer or whatever else. And in order to do that, you have to be in charge. Each person has to be in charge. You cannot give it to somebody else. And I had a secretary who was concerned about her husband's weight. So she brought him to my office, and I told him what to do. 2 weeks later, she came back and said, but he has not lost any weight. I said, how does he eat? Well, I give him the food. On the days I feel more hungry, I give him more food. On the days I don't feel hungry, I don't give him much food, but he goes out and eats. So unless the person takes charge, it won't work.
Right.
That's right. That's good. Good advice. So on that note, Elton, would you like to wrap up, and then I'll bring in the news about the club, and then
well, I just want to say, quite frankly, how incredible this was. Quite remarkable in this aspect that the information that was added, and I mean, you make a good point, Dr. Poothullil, that, control and slow down and get control. And most of the time that slowing down has to do with understanding, receiving the control mechanisms or reestablishing control, quite frankly.
Exactly.
Controlling what you eat, understanding its impact. And, of course, to the lady who was trying to help her husband, of course, it seemed like they were producing different messaging. In most marriages, things like that happen. But at the end of the day, you make an incredible impact. And Jerry, thank you so much for a comprehensive understanding. And going forward with our call in, I think our audience will be quite inspired because, of course, with the aspect of eating, awareness of foods, understanding its impact, establishing grounds and mechanisms for control would be inspirational or groundbreaking, quite frankly, groundbreaking. And so we are inspired, appreciative, and we are focused now and really looking forward to our official call with our audience to produce an impact that everyone could eat and chew and live with.
So on that note, if you're watching this broadcast on YouTube, we would like you to hit the subscribe button, and if you hit the bell, you will never miss any of our videos. And write us a comment, and we can send you a book. And join us for our wonderful Brightside Club, which is on Zoom. We meet every Monday at 8 p.m. and every Wednesday at 2 p.m. And Dr. John will be on with Jerry Baker, and we will have a fantastic Veterans Day celebration. We'll talk about diabetes, we'll talk about weight loss, and just for attending, you will get a book from Dr. John. So everyone who's attending is going to get a book. So please join us. This is going to be a momentous day. And if you're watching this video, even after the event, we hope you found it interesting. We hope you will take better care of your health. And especially during COVID, we don't want you to suffer by yourself. If you're battling any kind of disease, we want to empower you and bring you amazing speakers. And we hope that you have enjoyed this broadcast. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Dr. John, for giving us your valuable time and valuable books to help our veterans and our community. And thank you so much, Jerry, for joining us as well. I know time is valuable, and I really, really value each of you. And thank you, Jerry, also for being a sponsor. And we always love Shaklee products, and I'm getting some, so I'm excited about trying them myself. And we will talk more about it. Thank you so much.
And I'll take the test today, Jerry. Okay.